It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Episode 3 of the Amazing Digital Circus is officially here.
It came! It finally came!
After weeks of speculation and an eventual admittal by show creator Glitch themselves, we now have the Amazing Digital Circus on both YouTube and Netflix. And yes, at the time of recording this, I haven't had the chance to see the new episode yet. But I thought what better time to take on a challenge that the Discord has been asking me about since its inception. When are we getting the Amazing Digital Circus as Pokémon? Welcome to the channel, I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern, and that day is today. I'll be honest, I wasn't tracking this show's initial release, and I actually missed the pilot episode by a few days, but a friend of mine showed it to me and I was hooked instantly. As a person who grew up playing the hand-me-down PlayStation 1 from my aunt and learning computer skills through Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, the design elements of the show really spoke to me. So today, we'll be turning all of the main cast and a few others into Pokemon. I figure what better place to start than with our reluctant protagonist, Pomni. So I went in and I knew there were some shapes and some language that I wanted to get across with this design. I knew that I wanted it to look sad or confused and just have some air of, I really don't want to be here about the entire model of this Pokemon. So I got the line work set pretty quick. I knew very, very quickly what I wanted to go for, and it was just about adding those finer details. So you can see in Pomni's design that her main color inspirations are red and blue, but I wanted to get that yellow in there as well, and that became a little bit more difficult, so I ended up adding these little pieces. I also thought she has this blank stare, which I kind of associate to like squids. I don't know why, I just do. I always see like weird animal motifs and things that aren't there. So I went with that, and I made her this cute little juggling creature, but with no juggling accoutrement. So yeah, I thought it really adds to this sadness and this just despair, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, then you know that sadness, despair, and trauma are my bread and butter, so maybe I was still in the mindset of, yeah, I'm gonna make a Pokemon. I know how to make a Pokemon. You just make them sad. I don't know. I went in and Pomni seemed like the quickest, easiest, and simplest one to go for. Plus, being that she's the main character, I wanted to start on a high note, so here is Sobni. Sobni is the laughter Pokemon. I wanted to do that just to kind of play on the idea that she isn't the personality that she's meant to be based on her design. For the shiny, I went with this monochromatic look that is mimicking old cartoons, and I went ahead and made it a normal type. The reason that I made it a normal type is because I feel like there's a lot of potential here, and something that I've been doing with our Five Nights at Freddy's series is allowing you as the commenters to go in and make the abilities for me. Yes, because I don't want to, and because I'm terrible at abilities and making new ones or assigning ones that already exist, but also because you guys do a great job. So if this is your first time watching one of my videos, go down into the comments, let me know what abilities that you think Sobni should have. The people who've been watching me for a while, especially with my Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, already get this. So moving on, let's hop into a fan favorite, Jax. With Jax, I very quickly learned a lesson, a problem, a flaw with this whole project, which is that some of these characters are really simple. I always feel like it's really easy to take a complicated character and dwindle them down. I did that a lot with my Elden Ring series, but taking a character that's already so simplified and doing something new with it, making it a Pokemon, becomes very difficult without adding extra things. So I went with kind of the personality of Jax. He is a very snide, very manipulative type of character, and so I went ahead and gave him these like eyebrows that kind of emphasize that, so that he could still have that almost blank expression that some Pokemon have, but also still have that personality that Jax is known for. I haven't seen the latest episode yet. I'm probably going to watch it immediately after recording this, but yeah, I wanted to be able to handle some of that, and I'm hoping that the personality doesn't change too drastically between now and then. But yeah, I wanted to capture that idea. The overalls ended up being one of the more difficult spots to get stuck on, because how do you simplify overalls? They're already overalls. They're pretty simple, pretty, like, you know what they are when you're looking at them already. So I went ahead and gave him this almost jumpsuit-like design. I went ahead and simplified kind of the gloves out to just be his hands, giving it those 2 black spots on the back, just to signify that this is a representation of gloves. I put him in this almost kicking type of pose. I shouldn't say almost. He's very clearly kicking type of pose. He's not the type of person to say, yes, I outright kicked you, but he is. He's hurting you, and he's kind of gaslighting you on the whole thing. So I went with this type of pose, and I think it works well for just his personality type of being like this prankster, this jerk. And so we have Rabix. With the name, I wanted to use Jax, and I wanted to use Rabbit, and I thought, Jack Rabbit, or Jack6, or Rabnix, or something. So I ended up just mixing the words together, making Rabix. I did the same thing for the shiny here, but this will probably be the last time that you see that monochromatic style with the shiny. I made him the snide Pokemon, and for his abrasive personality, I felt there was no better fit than fighting. Normal might have worked too, but I didn't want to get stuck on that one type. So moving on to Ragatha. I wanted to keep that in mind. I've used normal, I've used fighting. Let's try to give some variation here. And so I wanted to give it almost this more smaller and energetic type of vibe. Ragatha's based on a ragdoll, very much like the Raggedy Andy style dolls and Raggedy Ann style. So I wanted to go with that, and I decided that this was gonna be a 2-stage form. So first I started off with this baby doll type figure. She's a doll after all, and what better way to emphasize that this is the smaller, more diminutive form than by making her a baby doll type, almost like one of those hay dolls that you see in old movies that like little pilgrim type kids would have. And so I went with that. Looking at it now, I'm realizing it looks a lot more like a Raggedy Ann mixed with a gray alien, which I can already hear a lot of you typing in the comments. That's perfectly fine. I think I'm okay with that, because the whole definition of these characters are to feel a little off. And what's more off than alien? So I think it works, and it definitely is something that goes a different direction, but still keeps a lot of the same flavor as we get into that evolved form. But for the moment, this is Ragdoll. I wanted to keep the term dull because of the dull colors and rag, so Ragdoll. It's the Stitch Pokemon. I also wanted to make it a fairy type because I wanted, again, to give it some variation, and I think a doll fits that motif. For the shiny, I went with giving it this opposite colored hair, so the opposite on the spectrum of this red is this blue, but also changed the colors specifically so that they're more of that dusty and raggedy type of energy to them. You'll notice the bottom of the dress has almost these dust bunnies accumulated to it, and I think that that was really cool. That was an idea that I had kind of at the very beginning for this character, and I end up carrying it through even into this version, which is another Ragatha Pokemon, the evolution to Ragdoll. Not a lot changes between the inspiration of Ragatha and the actual design of this Pokemon, and I think I'm okay with that. If there was going to be a character in this series who was kind of our more human-esque character, I feel like Ragatha really fits that build. So I just kind of went with it. I wanted to change up some of the shapes, so I gave the hair almost this flat across type of look, and then sprung up a couple pieces here and there, just to kind of give it some flavor, a little bit of variation, and cover it in these stitches. I took some inspiration here from Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas. If there's anyone who hasn't seen that and doesn't know what I'm talking about, leave this video right now and watch Nightmare Before Christmas. It is spooky season, which is another reason that I wanted to do this video today. But yeah, I took some inspiration from that with this stitched up dress, giving it kind of these flowy, torn up appendages, and then almost using those dust bunny type fluff balls as the poofs of the dress and the flowing bottom. Almost like without these poofs, this would be your standard like burlap sack style dress. But with them, it almost elevates her to princess status, makes her kind of by silhouette look more regal, but it's all a facade made by the worn out pieces and stuffing coming loose from her insides. I also really wanted to capture that eye. She has one button eye, one regular eye, and in the previous version I went with 2 button eyes, and so this one I wanted to kind of tell a story. What if the button eye fell off and revealed the true eye behind it? These characters are trapped in this world kind of in bodies that aren't their own, and so it's almost this small semblance of freedom. In the story of this design, it's almost the idea that these characters, these Pokemon, are something else hidden behind themselves. I'm not going to get into the whole ARG horror thing. That's for my Porico videos that release on Monday. Today I want to get into Raggy Danny, a play on Raggedy Annie, which is what Ragatha draws so much inspiration from. The shiny keeps the same motifs as the previous evolution, and it's still the Stitch Pokemon. But I wanted to add that ghost type in there as a nod to the abstraction that she goes through in the pilot episode. Partial abstraction, I'll say. But she's still that fairy and still that ghost. She is a trapped spirit, but is still very much kind of the caretaker of everyone else in the world of Amazing Digital Circus. So moving on, we've talked about Raggy Danny, I should say, as the previous Pokemon. One that cares for people and one that takes care of the others and is kind of a staple who survives being abstracted or removed or whatever it is that Caine does to them. So let's draw one who doesn't. One who isn't a caretaker and one who doesn't survive. Sorry for spoilers if you haven't seen episode 2, but I wanted to draw Gummigoo. Again, same issue that I faced with Jax. He is such a simple character that it became a real, issue. How do I make this into something that's Pokemon-esque? I mean, truthfully, Gummigoo already kind of looks like a Pokemon. It's a believable design. I mean, plus a cowboy hat. So what do I do here? Well, I just kind of slimmed it down to its absolute base elements. Let's start from the ground up, go from there. I took inspiration from things like gummy bears, obviously, and gummy sharks, and just kind of smoothed over and simplified a lot of the designs of those characters. It honestly helped a lot that for the Five Nights at Freddy's videos, I recently did a Monty, but it also kind of stifled what I was able to do with this design because I didn't want to go too close to the Monty Pokemon that we did just last week, and I also didn't want to get too close to Fuecoco. So I had to do something very, very different here. I went with the kind of mismatched pattern, almost a Spinda variation. I imagine that running into these things in the wild, you come across almost a different flavor often. Maybe you'll come into one of the goon types from the episode where it's like purples and pinks and oranges and yellows and all these other colors. And I thought that'd be really interesting. Almost like a Spinda type thing, where if you don't know, Spinda has so many variations that it's probably one of the most rare Pokemon to find one with a specific pattern that you're looking for. And that's what I went with for Gummidile. I had to pick the name Gummidile because I actually used the name Gumgator for that Monty Pokemon, but here he is, and I love him. I actually really like this design. For the shiny, I just made more neon green. I figure for the shinies of the various flavors that you'd come across, they would just have a primary color, that's their body color, to the whole thing. They're fairy type, of course, because they're based on food. And for some reason, that's the pattern that we've been going with for a lot of our fairy types. I hear that in the comments and in the Discord very often. It's, oh, well, if it's food, it's gotta be a fairy type. It is, of course, the candy Pokemon, and I think it is the perfect size in correspondence to the trainer down there, perfectly friend-shaped. So let's change that. If he starts out friend-shaped, he has to become a monster, I decided. I probably didn't need to evolve Gummigoo. He's not really around long enough for us to be able to say oh yeah, and what does he turn into? It's kind of the whole point of him being an NPC that he doesn't become anything. He doesn't get to evolve as a character. He just poofs away. Thanks, Caine. But I saw an alligator. I saw a crocodile. I believe he's a crocodile. I saw a crocodile and said, I've got to do something fun with that. Fralligator is one of my favorite Pokemon, not even because it's an alligator or a crocodilian of any type, but just because it's a cool design. And so I felt some love here for my crocodile, alligator, whatever you want to call him, friend. I'm going to get a lot of people in the comments saying, well, there's a big difference between alligators and crocodiles. I am well aware, but he's a gummy candy, so I don't know. It's hard to figure out based on that single point of reference. So I went with just kind of making the colors a little bit more vibrant, almost giving it that toxic type of vibe. Makes me think of those toxic barrel candies that are just painful to eat. So I liked that a lot. So I went with that for the color scheme and just wanted him to feel ferocious. Like I said, I didn't have to make this design. It's not around long enough that warrants it. But if I'm gonna make something for me that I think is cool, then I'm gonna make it for me. And I'm gonna make it in a way that makes it cool. So I went with almost this melting gummy candy type of vibe. I live in the West Coast. Gummy candy does not survive long out in the cars. It does not survive long in your pockets. The heat kills you. I drew this whole thing yesterday during 103 to 107 degree weather, and boy, I think that really informed the direction that I went with this melting gummy monstrosity that I have taken to calling Globberrock. Play on croc, kind of moving the letters around, and glob. So it is a fairy dark type, which may seem weird, but fairy for food, dark because dark gets a lot of biting moves, and I thought with a crocodile alligator monster thing, he should have some biting moves. This is the candy that bites you back. So he's still the candy Pokemon, and for the shiny, you'll notice I actually went with the opposite colors. Went to the other side of the spectrum on this. I thought that'd be fun. Maybe it's gonna be difficult to spot the different variations of flavor, but maybe that's part of the game. I don't know, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Moving right along, you can go ahead and skip this part. It's about Gangle, and who likes Gangle? I joke, I kid, I actually love Gangle. Gangle's a ton of fun. Just often overlooked and bullied by Jax, so I had to play that up just a scooch. So don't come at me. I do love Gangle, and I wanted to capture that here. I wanted to capture some of that energy, and as much as I tried, at least in this form, to capture kind of the twirly swirly body, I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna say, you know, there were other designs that I wanted to go with. Or maybe I might say, well, you know, it didn't fit the vibe or energy that I was going for. And now I'm going to tell you the truth. It was a nightmare to draw. I tried, and it was a nightmare to draw. Again, I drew all this in like 107 degree weather. So I said, I've got to get these out. I got to get these done. I'm very excited for the show. And I am really happy with the direction that it ends up going, actually. I think that I kind of started out just being lazy, because who cares about Gangle? But ended up just really liking the direction that it goes. It very much reminds me of one of my favorite Pokemon that we designed for the Five Nights at Freddy's series, which was our Sun and Moon style Pokemon. But this one I thought was really cool. I went ahead and gave its emotion to the sad face, being that that's often the one that we see since Gangle breaks her mask, or someone else breaks her mask every episode. So the sad one is the one that actually has the emotion. But this Pokemon will hide itself behind the smiling mask to make other people feel more at ease. So it uses both, and I wanted to capture those tears that I always felt were a really cool part of the design. I like that when Gangle moves around, the tears kind of jangle all over the place, almost like earrings or other jewelry. So I wanted to get that there. I also went ahead and made it a different typing than probably what you were expecting when you heard I was making Gangle to a Pokemon. I made it a ghost water type, and I kind of kept the name Gangle, just kind of pokefied it. But I made it a ghost water type because I wanted, again, to really focus in on the tears aspect, as well as that floating type of energy to it. It almost makes me think of a Yamask type Pokemon because of the mask. But I also see this Pokemon as almost attaching itself to other people. And I thought that was a really cool concept. So I went with it. I ran with it. It is the emotional Pokemon, and yeah, ghost water type. For the shiny, I went ahead and gave it this ectoplasm type vibe because over on our Discord, we're actually doing a monthly contest for October. Rather than doing a prompt every day, because not even I can keep up with that, I'm doing a prompt a week. And so on our Monday video, which is normally our ARG video, it still will be, but I'm gonna be showcasing a lot of the art for that contest. And the prompt this week was ectoplasm. So maybe I just had it on the brain. So as I said, this Pokemon's very reminiscent of a Five Nights at Freddy's character that we did for a different video. And I've gotten a lot of flack for that in a few other areas, comments, Discord, personal physical mail, of people saying, hey, when are you going to evolve your Sun and Moon Pokemon? It would be such a cool concept to do that, and I do intend to. But to hold you over, I wanted to evolve Gangle. So Gangle, for the story, I wanted to give that a big aspect to the evolution. I could just go cool, or I could just go big, or I could just go wild. I could give it a Gigantamax if I wanted to, but I decided instead that I wanted to follow the flow of the story of this Pokemon. Kind of like I said with Yamask and Cofagrigus, there's this background knowledge that you have about the Pokemon that makes sense why and how it evolved. So for Gangle, I wanted to do the same type of thing. I have it here crying because in the show, often its happy mask gets broken. So here it's crying, it's sobbing, it's weeping, and the broken mask is held in its arms. I pictured almost kind of trying to tie those two halves together, hold them together in front of its face in its little fight animation, but ultimately this has led it to kind of just sob even more uncontrollably, its tears flying everywhere, really hopping more into that water type over that ghost type. Still both, but we now get to see a little bit more of that water type show with how these tears kind of flow out and wrap around them. Still having that happy mask, holding onto it, just that little sprig of hope, but not there. You'll also notice that I took away the eyes. In the previous form, it had actual eyes within the sockets of the sad mask. In this version, those are completely gone. It is devoid of life. It has lost its will. Maybe that happy mask was the last remaining piece of joy that it felt it could have, and now that that's gone, it's just these cold, black, and lifeless eyes, and boy, I'm really diving into the trauma on these Pokemon. It's not Monday yet. I should hold off on the traumatic experiences that I give my Pokemon. So anyway, this is Ganglegaster. The name takes inspiration from Gangle, Poltergeist, Geist just as a term, and funny enough, Gaster from Undertale and Deltarune. So I wanted to kind of incorporate all those together and give it this just energy that I talked about throughout the drawing process, and I think it worked really well. For the shiny, I went with just more saturated color to the previous shiny, much purple and much more green, that's still ectoplasmic energy type material, which almost makes it look like the Joker, which I kind of dig, because isn't that character like the epitome of the duality between comedy and tragedy? I just think it works. Ugh, now that Gangle's out of the way, again, joking, I love Gangle, but now that Gangle's out of the way, let's hop into the best character from the Amazing Digital Circus, Kinger. Oh my gosh, I love Kinger, his whole vibe, his whole energy, just mwah, chef's kiss. I love every frame that he is in is my favorite frame of the show, and so I wanted to take that into account, but I found myself really stuck on what are you? How do we make this work? He's got like these white gloves, this wooden head, and then again, super simplified body. How do we make that super simplified body work here? And I was kind of stuck until I started to take some inspiration from things outside of Pokemon, outside of the Amazing Digital Circus, and focused on this beetle. Here on the West Coast, we have this thing called the bark beetle. They just decimate trees, and understanding that Kinger is quite fond of his bug collection, I thought that's such an interesting little connection there, especially the fact that he loves bugs. The bug that I jumped on is just a super termite, just devours wood in a matter of days. That kind of fits his whole vibe. He loves bugs and keeps bugs around that would kill him, honestly, absolutely, without a second thought. So I went ahead and made him this bug type, almost a pseudo-Wudo-esque type of energy as well. He is often eaten by these bugs or devoured by them in some ways, to the point that he himself has taken on a lot of those traits as a defense mechanism, but at the same time, he's actually can't be hurt by them. You'll see in the typing that I do, but I wanted to make this absolutely nervous boy, favorite boy, wonderful little Kinger into a Pokemon, and I got stuck. And I think that what I worked out fits a lot of the motifs that I was going for, and while it is a little bit more stretched than normal, I think it still matches the prompt. So this is Kabeetle, Steel bug type. Like I said, the bugs will bite him, they'll hurt him, but they're not really gonna do much damage. So Steel type and bug type. I don't know, I kind of went a little nuts with this one, to be honest. He is the shelled Pokemon. Maybe he's using a lot of that wood that he himself has eaten. Maybe he himself is a bark beetle, as this like shield, this helmet to show that he is the king of bark beetles. This is why I need you guys. Let me know in the comments what the abilities and dex entries are for these guys. What I do know is for the shiny, I wanted to go very opposite colors, giving his robe much more of a black type of vibe, and his wood helmet hand things more of this bluish type of tint, also mimicking the other side of the chessboard where he is the white piece, the shiny would be the black piece to the same chessboard. I actually kind of spent some time trying to figure out if I wanted to make him a King Gambit type of thing and went against it. Following Kabeetle, I want to jump into Zooble. What the heck? What the heck am I supposed to do with this? I ended up attaching myself, which is a fun little pun there, to the idea that Zooble is a customizable type of toy. We see her kind of unplug her arms and antenna, coming in with different variations of her own body, and I thought, ooh, I don't have a gimmick Pokemon yet. I don't have an Eevee or a Tetsuguri or anything like that that's like a really interesting gimmick. And so, Zooble. I looked up a ton of different Pokemon just to kind of fit the different types of composition that I wanted for this design. I thought, what if you take parts of Pokemon, different pieces of other Pokemon, and mix them together? So you can see we have the head of Porygon, the antenna of Caterpie, the body of a Sharpedo, an arm of Beedrill, an arm of Greninja, a leg of Mr. Mime, and a leg of Dracovish, all kind of meshed together. Some other little inspirations here and there that aren't too much that I super need to get into. That other eye is absolutely a Pokemon, but I'll leave that up to you in the comments. But yeah, I thought, oh man, this is gonna be kind of weird. This is gonna be kind of goofy. But as I began to kind of color it and put the design together, building my pieces, getting all my blocks and Legos where they should be and where I thought they needed to be, I started to think, oh man, this might be one of my favorite designs. I don't know, maybe it's ridiculous, but I think the gimmick, as well as just the concept of these plug and play pieces, as well as really fitting the prompt of Zooble, I'm pretty proud of this one. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys. I'm pretty proud that I was able to pull this off and create Zoo Many, a play on Too Many, as well as Zoo and Zooble. So this is the mismatched Pokemon, much like Pomni. It is a normal type. I'm gonna need you guys to come up with some crazy ability for this type of Pokemon here. You'll notice the stats are all perfectly evened out. I anticipate that would change with whatever's worked out by the audience here. So I wanted to give you guys some room to play. The funnest part of this design, I will say, is the little tiny shiny up in the top right corner. The different pieces, I had to research not only the Pokemon that they came from, but also what their shinies looked like. So each part of that shiny is a reference to the actual shiny of the Pokemon that it came from. They may not be 100% perfect because I wanted some of the colors to match with the others, but that was a fun little experiment to play with. And as I've done in other videos, I have to ask myself, who is a trainer enough to be able to handle all these Pokemon? If you run into these Pokemon and you find someone that you have to battle, who's gonna be in control of them? Well, obviously that's gonna be Caine. So I set myself on the journey, the experiment, the mental anguish and torture of turning Caine not into a Pokemon. I felt like that'd be too easy. Turning him into a trainer, maybe a gym leader, maybe the champion. I don't know what this region would be, but I had to turn him into a human in some aspect, and I actually like tossed and turned over this on how I wanted to handle this whole concept, and I came up with this idea of utilizing the top hat and almost like a clown collar as the teeth and eyes of Caine. The eyes end up becoming these like earrings, which I think is really cool because in motion, I can see them fully like dangling around and kind of moving loosely to kind of stare wherever he happens to be staring, and then matching that up to his circus ringmaster type outfit. Even going as far as kind of expanding that teeth motif onto the arm guards there, and just, I don't know, it felt like it worked. He's the ringmaster. That's why he's designed that way, of the Amazing Digital Circus. And so I thought this trainer should not stray too far away from that vibe. But man, is he terrifying. This is definitely one of those trainers that I would beat and then say, wonderful, I don't have to face them ever again. I don't have to look at that monstrosity ever again. And I am perfectly happy with that. So yeah, it's an interesting concept. I don't do a ton of trainers. I've done them before, and you guys seem to really enjoy that. Like I said, with the Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, we did a Vanny, we did a MatPat, we did a Markiplier, all as trainers in that world. So I thought if anyone's gonna be a trainer, if anyone's gonna be the one in control of these Pokemon, why not Caine? So, what do you think about Pokemon Trainer Caine? In fact, let me know what you think about all of the creations that we did today. It was a ton of stuff and a ton of fun. So I've had a lot of fun doing this project. I'd actually been looking forward to it for a while and just kind of wanted to wait till episode 3 popped up. So I'm glad it was able to happen. You can also catch more of my stuff. I have a Five Nights at Freddy's series that's been going on, as well as a Pokemon ARG that's been happening, dropping videos every Monday, as well as hints throughout every video that I drop throughout the week until that ARG is done. You can also find me at Ko-fi and Patreon, all found below, and join our Discord community. It's a fun group of people. Like I said, we have contests going on all the time and a lot of just really good conversation. We're about to hit 500 members, so maybe that'll be you. Maybe you'll be member 500. Wouldn't that be awesome? So with that all said, it sounds like you know where to find me, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Bye.